but the enemy is not each other. The enemy is the system, and we are never going to overcome that as long as we allow it to divide us.
And so we're shining a light on Black lives. It didn't dim your light, Amy.
Yeah.
If anything, yours is still brighter. We're just shining one beam on Black lives, and we're asking for you to see it from over there. Welcome all, and thank you so much for joining me for the Conversations with My White Allies series. Today we're doing something a little different. I'm actually joined by two Asian allies, and we'll talk a bit about what it means to be an ally to Black folks during this time, also to be a part of another underrepresented minority group at this time as well. So today I'm joined by Angela and Ella. I'd love for you both to give a little intro of yourselves, tell us where you're from, tell us what you do, and maybe share your absolute favorite food. Ella, I'll start with you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, Morgan. I'm so excited to be here. So my name is Ella. I am from Roseville, California. I'm a support lead at School of Motion, and my favorite food is hands down sushi. Always have to have 2 rolls, one spicy, one sweet, with extra special sauce on the side.
Well, thank you, Ella. It's awesome to have you here. Angela, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, so thanks again. As I was saying, thank you so much for having me. I just feel really blessed to be part of this conversation. My name is Angela. I live in Columbia, Missouri. I'm a strategic communication and marketing director, but what I take the most pride in is being a mom. And I have a 9-year-old daughter, almost 10-year-old daughter going into 4th grade this fall.
How quick did that happen?
Yeah,
Quick.
I can't even.
You blinked?
Yeah, and my favorite food, so this is really hard, but like right now it's summer and I'm really loving just a simple Mediterranean salad, tomatoes, cucumber, fresh dill, and then like I like fresh dill, and then a little olive oil, salt, pepper. Great if you throw in some pickled shallots or a Bailey couscous. It's like delicious right now. In terms of sushi, actually, I do have a recommendation that doesn't have fish. A fudamaki roll. Are you allergic to eggs?
No.
Okay. So the fudamaki roll is pretty much vegetarian.
Okay.
And it's one of my favorites. It's something I always order.
I'm really excited about this because my husband loves sushi, and I was like, no, we're not doing sushi because I don't like it. So now I'm like, I can get in there and try something. So thank you for the tips. Again, excited to have both of you. Thank you both for agreeing to do this. I know that these conversations are uncomfortable to sometimes, to say the least. Conversations about race, about allyship can just be, they can be tough. And we all have different viewpoints, perspectives on these topics. So I'm excited to have you all here to bring sort of a different perspective to the table. I will jump in with myself, a little intro. I never want to assume that anyone knows who I am. So my name is Morgan Smith-Linyard. I am a HR business partner at Help Scout, and I reside in Columbia, Missouri, much like Angela, but always rep in San Diego. That's where I grew up. And for that reason, my absolute favorite food is street tacos. Must be carne asada or carnitas, corn tortilla. If it's not a corn tortilla, by the way, it's just not even a taco. It doesn't even count in my opinion. So that's my go-to. I love that. Awesome. Well, I am so excited to kick off this conversation. Just to sort of recap run-up show, we're going to have some candid and possibly uncomfortable conversation around Black experience and what is meaningful allyship. Myself and my guests will bounce questions back and forth, and we will answer openly, honestly, and ideally unfiltered. So I'm going to jump in with the first question, just to sort of get things going. What's sort of been on my mind since the re-kickoff of the Black Lives Matter movement? I consider myself very much so an empath. So while I think about my own feelings, I also think of the feelings of just everyone around me. This sort of kicked off during COVID-19, in which our interesting leader has made some statements that are offensive and hateful towards our Asian community, specifically the Chinese community. And I wondered if those in the Asian community feel sidelined by the Black Lives Matter movement. I know that there are so many underrepresented minorities within America that are struggling, that are facing injustice, that are wanting their voices to be heard, and then flip of a switch. Black Lives Matter is out, it's in front. Everyone is rallying behind it and supporting it. Is there a feeling of being sidelined? Is there a feeling of, where was our support? When were people going to show up for what we were experiencing too? Angela, so I'll kick that one to you first. What do you think?
My initial response is no, this isn't about us when it comes especially to police brutality. We know that Black men are at highest risk of being killed by police. I found a study, a 2019 study, that showed there's 1 in 1,000 Black men can expect to be killed by police in their lifetime. Native men and women and Latino men are also at a higher lifetime risk of being killed by police. Asian Pacific Islanders and Latino women are at a lower risk actually than their white peers, according to this study. So when it comes to police brutality, this is definitely not about us. And our country, we have a black and white problem that we can't ignore. We have hundreds of years of slavery and Jim Crow and systemic racism. And at the end of the day, the policies that are going to improve the lives of Black people are going to improve the lives of everyone. So
I completely agree with that. Yeah. To echo on that, I think it's hard to speak for the entire Asian Pacific Islander population, but for myself and my family, we absolutely do not feel sidelined. We know a lot of people who have experienced a lot of trauma during COVID-19 when it first hit. I know a family member actually was spat on because of it. And everyone has a right to feel. Everyone has a right to be angry, be mad. But the weight that we've carried within the several months is not comparable to the Black people who've experienced this for centuries and 400 years of the systemic injustices. And I just feel that it's kind of upsetting because I am getting mixed responses from family who will disagree with me, but we just kind of have to keep amplifying Black voices, keep speaking out and having these tough conversations because kind of have to shake them up, because we have to make that change. Once, if Black people have not been getting the same basic human rights after centuries, then what makes you think white Americans will treat us the same? That's how I see it.
Okay. Yeah. I figured we'd go in alphabetical order. So, Angela, you want to hit us with your first question?
Okay. So you asked if we felt sidelined, and I would say no. But one of the things I have kind of struggled with, I guess, is this uncertainty. Where do we fit into the Black Lives Matter movement? Are we perceived as allies or as oppressors? Am I perceived as coming from a place of privilege, like a white person? And where's the right place to be? Should I be at protests? I guess it's just, if you want to go with the field analogy, when do we jump into the play? When do we cheer from the stands? And when do we just need to be on the sidelines like cheerleaders rallying the crowd?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually love this question because I think it just shows genuine care, right? the want to be a part of the movement while not detracting from it or hurting it in any way. So I appreciate the question. I think sort of where anyone fits into the movement. Do you protest? Do you stand on the sideline as cheerleaders? What action do you take? The action is kind of up to you and what you're comfortable with. You know, I've got many Black folks that are just like, I'm not comfortable going to protest. Certainly right now, right? Like again, middle of COVID-19, there's a spike. People don't really want to be out in the streets doing those sorts of things. So it's really up to what you're comfortable with. To me, just like as long as you're being vocal, you're not being silent right now, that is allyship in and of itself. But what I find that everyone wants to focus on is like, how can I help or be a part of the movement without placing emphasis on how they can help and be a part of the people. To me, the latter is the most important piece. So what I know with 100% certainty is the movement is going to have a lull, just like the last time Black Lives Matter movement was alive. Well, life happens, it's going to die down to some degree. But Black people are forever, right? So start there is what I would prefer personally. Support Black businesses, share Black voices, support Black causes. I find this one to be incredibly important. Get to know and protect Black children. Immerse yourself fully into Black culture, because that is indeed American culture, no matter what the books tell you. So if you're religious, visit, tithe at a Black church every now and then. You know, you can enroll your kids into sports leagues that have a more diverse racial makeup. Just immerse yourself into the culture so that you can better understand it. And when you understand something, you're motivated to fight for it. It encourages you to look for ways to ensure that that culture thrives. Like that's the movement to me. So great things that I've had friends do for me that I consider allies, to uplift me. And I would hope that you all have some Black friends that you can uplift as well. Like, just let them know that you see them. Like, my friends will send my kids children's books by Black authors with Black representation. My kids' godparents are Mexican and white. They send gifts that are of Black representation, so my kids see themselves. They grow up feeling good about being Black. Like, just those gestures, the conversations that they spark, they mean so much. And I can only assume that like the next generation is what we have to carry this thing forward. It's not Black Lives Matter movement. It's the next generation. So like, care about the people first is my answer to that, I think. What about you, Ella? Questions? What you got?
So I've been getting a lot of mixed responses from Asian and Pacific Islander folks about being an ally. They have been feeling angry, but they don't feel like they have a place to be angry, because our experiences are completely different. And culturally, I guess a lot of us can be more quiet, but it's hard for me to determine whether they're quiet because they're just silently helping with donations. And I just don't think silently, I guess, being silent is not being an ally. I think some Asians that I know are scared to make their allyship performative. So for me, I just feel like if you're silent, then you're pretty much, I'm assuming you're not an ally. And I would just like to know what both of your experiences are with like your Asian friends and family, Pacific Islander friends and family, and how have you handled that?
I'll go first since, yeah, I'll go first on that one. So I heard you say something about just having Asian friends or family members sort of worrying that if they speak, that it'll be performative. Like, it's not performative unless it's performative. So if they have something to speak about and like they believe that, they feel strongly, they are in support, then no, like it's not performative and they should absolutely do that. I have to assume that if there is sort of this back and forth in the Asian community about like, you know, support or not support, that maybe there's some worry about backlash from other Asians that they know, family or not family. And that, again, like allyship is a risk. It's a risk all the time. You know, I've talked to allies across the board and them having said like, I've lost family members over speaking. God, that sucks, you know? I don't want a movement to tear a family apart, but like, damn, if you feel so strongly about the rights of Black people and speaking like that, that's allyship. So yeah, there's a little bit of risk involved, and everybody has to calculate what that risk is. Is it worth it for them, I guess? Allyship to me is sticking your neck out. It's putting yourself in harm's way. Speaking is putting yourself in harm's way. Every time that I speak on Facebook, there's at least one negative comment from a friend, from an acquaintance that I thought, you know, it's sticking your neck out because Black people are always at risk. So allyship to me means that you have to be speaking. It is not just backdoor monetary donations. On my end, most of my like Asian Pacific Islander friends and acquaintances have been quite vocal from what I can see. I've seen quite a few go out to protest. They're definitely using their social media to raise awareness. For the few that aren't, like, I don't feel a close enough relationship to them to ask why that is, you know, like, and maybe that's a naive statement, or maybe it's just me like being afraid, but I don't know, would you be okay with a Black friend asking you if you weren't being vocal? Would you be okay with like me being like, hey, Ella, why aren't you speaking up, you know, or would that be uncomfortable?
I wouldn't feel offended.
Okay.
Like, I think having uncomfortable conversations is important. Being uncomfortable is important.
I just don't want people to feel, so yeah, like there's obviously people, white, Asian, Latinx, that like are friends or acquaintances that I haven't seen speak, but I don't want them to feel attacked if I'm like, hey, where do you land on this? I haven't seen anything from you. So I don't know, that like, I don't want anyone to feel accosted by the question. So when I see someone being silent, I just tend to like, I don't know where they stand, but I'm not gonna really do anything about it. It's kind of my, I don't know if that's the right move, but that is kind of my move. Just be like, okay, I guess.
I think for me, it irritates me. Like, I see you posting about food. I see that you're just going along with your day, but you're not going to acknowledge that Black Lives Matter. It does irritate me, so.
You know, also similar to Morgan, I'll be honest, growing up in the Midwest, and actually I was adopted into a white family. So I, you know, was raised in white culture and have been surrounded by white people most of my life. I don't have that many Asian friends. And those that do, have similar experiences to me as feeling very always a minority. And so I would actually say the two who come to mind are actually way more vocal than I am. But Morgan, I don't think it's wrong for you to reach out and say, where are you? I think that's important. And especially, it could be someone who's sitting on the sidelines because they aren't sure where they fit.
Yeah.
And it could be that you're going to give them that opportunity, or it could be that you're going to hold them accountable. I mean,
So that makes it Angela's turn. Angela, you got another question?
I do. So actually kind of switching gears. We're all mothers, and I think we all share the goal of raising race-conscious, social justice-oriented global citizens. So I'm curious, you know, as mothers, what are you doing to work toward that goal? You know, do you have tips or suggestions or ideas, I guess, for things that other parents could be doing?
Yeah. Ella, you want to take this one first?
Sure. My kids are younger than yours. I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. I made it a point when they were born to not have any white dolls in the house. also an honor and exception because they're obsessed with that movie, but I think representation matters entirely. Growing up, I didn't have any like Asian sitcoms to watch other than if my parents, we had like access to like Filipino channels. It was either really Filipino or a white sitcom. There was nothing that represented us. So although it wasn't something that was discussed in the household for me growing up, but I really wanted to change that with my girls growing up. So anything that they watch, I'm just honest with them and let them know, like, these issues are white issues. You can't really relate to them. You don't see a lot of, Asian roles, cartoons, movies, or anything like that. So when they're watching whatever's on TV, all of them are mostly white, lighter skinned. So I point that out, I let them know. Right now they're obsessed with She-Ra, which I really like because it's a really great show that promotes like inclusivity and diversity. But so we're really hard on that. Growing up, I love Sesame Street and the way that they kind of like changed it up now. I think is a great way for me to like let them know, and it's a great way to introduce them. Like, we all have different hairs, we all have different skin colors, so it's kind of like delicate, but at the same time, when you see them interested at on social media, and my nieces are here watching TikTok, and then they see, all the social injustices, racial injustices, I do let them know, like, this is a real issue. Like, people are dying. I might be a little extreme with how I approach it, but I think it's important for them to know at a young age because, there just isn't enough representation.
Yeah. I love all that. Well, I love all of it. Please keep doing all of that. Mine is even more different. My children are very, very young. So it's, the conversations have to be, I don't know, maybe they don't have to be. I'm sure there's someone who has like a specialty in childhood education who's going to be like, no, you don't dumb it down or water it down for them. But I feel like I need to. So my son is 4, my daughter is not even 2 yet. So most of the conversations right now are happening with Parker, my son. And I don't know, like, I try to let him in on as much as like I feel comfortable with. I feel like I'm walking this fine line of like, he's in a space right now where he can kind of really say, I don't see color, right? He doesn't, while he sees it, he doesn't necessarily get the differences behind them or what it means for experience, right? I think that's what seeing color ultimately means as an adult. He's in that space, and I don't want to cross him over that line too soon. I talk about this with my husband all the time. My son is a Black boy, and he's going to be a Black man. There's enough hardship awaiting him that, like, I don't want to give it to him at 4. I don't want him to feel it at 4, that he's different, or that, certain people hate him, that certain people fear him. I don't want him to have that on his heart already, because it's going to come soon enough. I think I was confronted with racism and a conversation at 6, when a neighborhood friend, parents wouldn't let us come into their house. We could play outside with their children, but not in the house. And my parents had to have a conversation with me about why that was. Hopefully Parker gets a little bit more time, but I struggle with just bringing too much to him too soon. That said, I did, when the protest kicked off, I even posted a Facebook video of it. Like, I did, again, COVID-19, so I didn't let him get out, but we did drive through one, and I rolled down the windows and sort of explained to him, just why people were out there in a way that he could understand, and just saying like the positives, right? These people are out here because they love you. They love you, they love mommy, they love people that look like us. I didn't want him to know that there was something else that happened before it that's been happening for a long time, that showcased that not everybody loves us. But these people right here, they're out here because they love you. This is a party for you. And so he kept asking all week, is there going to be another party for me? Which, yeah, it's, you know, a 4-year-old's understanding. When I went to a protest, I think it was about a week later, you know, I showed him my sign, which had a lot of names on it, of people killed by police, and just sort of explaining to him what the sign was, what it meant, and where I was going. You know, I'm going to another party that is celebrating, you know, the lives of Black people, future and past, and, you know, making us equal, ideally. So I try to give them what I can in small doses that feel right for me right now. But yeah, I representation is everything. It is absolutely everything. I want him to understand that he can do and be anything, not despite the color of his skin, but because of it. Because Black people are equal, because they are great. Like, that's what we try to model for him right now. I tell people this all the time. His favorite movie and character is Spider-Man, but it is not Peter Parker. It is Miles Morales. And he thinks that it is him. Like, he watches that movie and he's like, that, it's me. Like, look at his hair.
That's representation. That,
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
that's
He
the,
loves
It's the best
that.
one anyways.
It is the best one. And so I just think like the idea that my son doesn't even know really who Peter Parker is. Like, he knows Miles Morales. That is Spider-Man. So representation means so much. So we try to make sure that he has that as frequently as possible, that he sees himself. Yeah.
I didn't know that I wasn't white until I went to elementary school. And then I found out pretty quickly. So, I mean, I wish, not only I wish that my parents had been more prepared to support me when that happened, but also I wish that maybe I don't know how they would have prepared me for it to happen, but if there could have been some sort of conversation so that I was already prepared for how I might respond in that situation.
Oh.
And with my daughter, you know, what I had was Hamilton. So we listened to that soundtrack over and over and over in the car, and it is full of opportunity, teaching, learning opportunities. You know, ladies, tell your husbands, vote for Burr. We'll never be free until we end slavery. We know who's really doing the planting. Like, all of those were openings so that if I could ask, you know, do you know why you said that? And explain the things used to be different. I started there. But.
All right. Well, great. Thank you for tackling that question with me. Ella, I think you're next. Do you have a next question?
Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, I have a 6-year-old who's going to be in 1st grade in the fall. And I know she'll be exposed to white American history, but I really want that to change because Black History Month is not enough. And it's the shortest month of the year, so it's just not right for them to emphasize Black history in February. And I do my best to educate them at home, you know, through books, but I don't think that's enough. So I just want to know, is that the same in your school districts? I know it's a small drop in the bucket to kind of change that, but white American history is, I think it's equally as important to emphasize Black American history as much as we do with white American history. So what has been implemented, if that is something that is has been changed in your district, and how can we change that across the board?
Yeah, I'll go first. This one is, again, hard for me because I don't have school-age children. That said, my nephew is school-age, so he is 11, about to be 12 next week. And then I have several friends who have school-age children around town. And what I'm hearing, because we have had this conversation recently, like, what do we do? Like, Black history isn't really a thing. Like, if you really think about it, it's a small chapter in a very big history book. And what they're saying is, like, we all have this ability to challenge the school, challenge the teacher directly. I had one friend who said that last year, what they did was during, I guess it was like back to school night or whatever, like, you meet your teacher, you come in and just ask the teacher, hey, can I book 30 minutes with you one day next week or the week after? And they met up and just went over the curriculum. She made it very clear that, hey, I'm interested in the history part of your teachings. Can you tell me the curriculum? Tell me how much time you really spend on these sections and what this looks like. And from there, it was just like, I've got these resources, because sometimes it really is up to you as a parent. Like, if the school isn't going to change it themselves, teachers are already run thin, time and monetarily. Hey, I've got this book, I've got these worksheets. Are you willing to include this in your lesson plan? And she said she had really great success with it. They had included 3 additional books that she had picked out and like 4 worksheets that they had worked on, and actually like created a project out of it. So I'm sure that many teachers, certainly at this point, are willing to add additional books and lessons to their plan. And I want to say this, I think that you should do this as a parent with school-age children. I think that you should do this, or try to, for Black history and Asian American history, because honestly, there isn't much of either one in the history books that I remember, and I'm talking about elementary through college. Unless you were specifically taking an African American history studies course in college, American history does not include anything but white people, to my recollection.
Slavery.
So, other than slavery, yes, which again is just the setup for everyone that Blacks are inferior. So, yeah, let's teach something different, and yeah, part of that responsibility, I guess, falls on us. But aside from that, yeah, like speak. There are PTA groups. You have an opportunity to book time with your principals and vice principals. It's up to us to go do it, to go be vocal until change happens. So yeah, like I said, I've had one friend that's been fairly successful with it, and hopefully others will step up to the plate too.
Thanks for that. That's good.
Like Morgan said, what your friend had luck with. The best thing is just to start. I mean, let's assume all the teachers have really good intent, and we know they're stretched thin. And so just going in and asking those questions, even just starting from the beginning, if they know that it's important to you, then I think that's in their mind. And I think teachers are also, they have to be concerned about the parents are going to be mad about what they teach their kids. And so I think it is important to at least make sure the teacher knows what your values are. And then they may make more of a conscious effort.
And also incorporating the current events now is really important. So that's another thing that I would take into consideration when approaching. It's important to know the history, but also what's currently going on.
I cannot agree with that more. I actually had a really great, giving up my age. So I was in 6th grade, and when 9/11 happened. And my history teacher, every day after, he would bring in the newspaper, he would open it, and he would choose 3 headlines. He'd read it, and then we'd discuss the headlines and what we felt about them, what we felt about the people that were being described. Obviously, there was a lot of sort of Middle Eastern hate language in news articles during that time. And I remember just being really grateful for those conversations, because I think that we can be warped by news media. And if you're not educated enough, and certainly as children, we're just not educated enough, right? We're children. And so you need someone to have those very robust discussions with you about what's happening in the world and what it means and what's happening on the other side of the world as a result. I think that is wildly important. I think there should be like a class that is just dedicated to like world events. Here's what's happening. Let's talk about it. Like, I feel like that is so key. So yeah, I think the takeaway is, start the conversation. I think that's the hardest and easiest thing to do. Hi, teacher.
Yeah.
I know it's the first day of class, but
Take over.
Yeah. Well, Angela and Leo, we'll shoot it to you next. Do you have another question?
So one idea, or one kind of question, I'm wondering if you've ever tried to use the racial and gender stereotypes in any way to your advantage. Like, how do we, if we have this thing that we can't change, how do we, on our own, we can't change it. How do we maybe try to use it to our advantage? Is that perverse, totally perverse, practical? Am I completely delusional even thinking that this might be a possible thing to try to, as a way to, I mean, like how Black people reclaimed Black as, they're.
That said, have I ever used a stereotype to my benefit? It's interesting. I mean, as a Black person, most of the given stereotypes are negative. So it would be difficult for me to use them to my benefit. I don't know, like as a woman, I guess. I don't know if this is using this to my benefit. It's just part of my personality. Certainly in business, it's the stereotype would be for women that, a little bit more, I don't know, quiet, reserved. They're going to kind of take a back seat in meetings to some degree. Men are going to speak and do the speaking and have the seats at the table. I prefer that setup with all people, not just men, by the way. I like to listen. It's just who I am. So yeah, do I use that stereotype as a woman to my advantage? Sure. I don't make it a point to try to overstep it and speak when I don't feel like it to counter that stereotype in any way. I just kind of let it ride. I like to listen. I like to absorb all of the smart and ignorant statements in the room, take notes, and then come back with a lot of incredibly smart shit to say and counter to everything that I've just heard. So I don't know if that's using a stereotype to my advantage rather than just like using my own personality.
No, that's exactly though what I have tried to, okay, so you're going to underestimate me.
Right.
Underestimate me, and then let me come back.
Let me show you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe that is, I guess, using it to a benefit, but on the Black side of things, I'll have to think about it while I'll let Ella answer and I'll think, but I'm struggling to find any area where I've used my Blackness to my advantage.
For me, I would say on the racial end of things, no. I think it's unintentional that I just fall into it. Like I have two sisters and they're super duper smart. They're your like straight A students. And I wasn't a straight A student. So I was always kind of like fighting against the grain. I'm always like really vocal. I know in like the Asian culture and being a woman, you're supposed to be quiet and sit back. I was always so quick to defend. I guess I just never lived up to that that high level of achievement, which is so opposite from taking advantage of my race. And because I think like in school, everyone just assumed that I was smart because of the way I looked. but I wasn't like the brightest.
I think that this is an interesting question for sort of the two sides that we're talking about here, right? So when I'm saying I can't think of any stereotype for me that I could use to my advantage, right? Black people are stupid. Black people play sports. Black people are ghetto, etc. None of those could ever benefit me. I was none of those things, actually. So yes, I took pleasure in disproving every stereotype. And then when you think about the Asian American population, the stereotypes sort of that you're incredibly smart, you're going to be into the maths and the sciences of the world, you're going to make a pretty penny. It's almost like you don't need to really you probably want to push against those stereotypes, and I get that on both sides, but to use it to your advantage, I don't know that it's even possible on either side, really, to use it to your advantage. I think either you are 100% pushing against it, or yeah, I fell into some of them in one way or another, but I don't know that either side can use them to their advantage. Does that feel off?
No, I completely
No, that's kind of my question. Like, am I just completely
It's like, can you?
delusional, thinking that I might be able to find some silver lining?
Yeah, and I've been sitting here as we've been talking, I was like, how could I spin something? Because if it's possible, I want to do it.
Yeah.
Well, Black women are strong, but then also the stereotype that Black women supposedly don't feel pain backfires, and that's how Black women don't get the medical treatment.
Yeah, backfires in medicine. Backfires in numbers with regard to depression and anxiety, as far as I'm concerned.
That's where the model minority myth.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Young Asian American females and their suicide rates.
Can't live up to the standard in which people have created for you, then well, damn, you know. So yeah, I think that
for sure.
Yeah, I think Asian Americans and Black Americans probably just like the perfect two groups. Like I don't know if there's a way to benefit from the stereotypes that are in place. Ella, what do you got for us?
Okay, so I've noticed that in sports, some players are wearing BLM shirts in support, but I see it like in the field, in the stadium, but they're not kneeling during the national anthem. So what are your thoughts about that? Do you think that's considered performative?
I mean, I can see it being, let's talk about the shirts first. I can see the shirts being performative or 100% allyship. I'm not entirely sure if the shirts are a personal choice. I'd have to, look at some of the, I don't know, they put this information on the websites, or you can reach out to someone to find out. I don't know if the shirts are a choice by players or if the organization has said, because let's be honest, first of all, supporting Black Lives Matter right now is a money move. It is a money move. I don't care how you spin it, for businesses to say that they support Black Lives Matter, because what they know is that if they don't say it, you're going to lose some dollars. Let's also talk about sports. The majority of sports in the US are Black, the players anyway. You don't want to lose players, that's for sure, because that's where the money, and the merch and like it's all a business. So supporting Black Lives Matter is a money move. So I don't know if the shirts are a personal choice by the players or if it is a choice by the organization and they said, when you come out tonight, you're wearing these shirts. So it could be one or the other. It could be that the person, the player, the athlete wearing the shirt strongly feels that Black Lives Matter, or it could be this is the shirt that they hung up in my locker tonight that I needed to come out here and put on. I don't know. So it could be either. The kneeling situation for me, honestly, anybody who wasn't kneeling at the time that Kaepernick was kneeling, to me, is performative at this point. no one wanted to do it when he was doing it, when it was uncomfortable as hell, when he was catching all that flack, when he lost his damn career. Nobody else, not, I don't want to say nobody, there was a few. Aside from those few who kneeled with him in solidarity, everyone else at this point is performative to me. It can't just be a fad, you know? If you cared about it that deeply, you would have done it then, to me. To the people not kneeling right now, I know that kneeling in the national anthem means different things for different people. My husband is a U.S. Army veteran. We have friends that I consider family that are still in. I know that for some, kneeling during the national anthem is like some sort of kick at the U.S. military. It doesn't feel that way to me. I think Cap made it very clear what he was kneeling for. And so I've never understood that. I guess what I'll say is that for the people who do truly believe that like standing and put their hand over their heart for the national anthem is showing their support for the troops, then keep doing that. If that's what you really feel, if that's how you were raised, you feel strongly about it, keep doing that. While you're doing that, if you really do care about Black lives, find some other very strong way to show it.
I mean, I know that there are some veterans who do, and will say, and you know, veterans who show up at Black Lives Matter. And just, I feel like this is part of how the people in power can retain their power by creating these false dichotomies. So this idea that you either kneel, you're either with or against us, and that you cannot be both. The idea that Black Lives Matter means other lives don't. The idea that Black Lives Matter is anti-all police or something. I mean, the idea that immigrants are taking our jobs. All of these. You have, go ahead, interrupt me.
No,
me.
Everything you're saying is 100, and I feel like I have argued this point to death. My husband is both Black and a veteran. He served his country and he is Black. His Black life matters, and yes, we should also care about him as a vet. They're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
I have an uncle who's a police officer and he is Black. It doesn't, you can't, we're human, we're so multifaceted. It doesn't need to be one or the other. But what it boils down to, what Black Lives Matter boils down to, is that in the United States of America, we've made it very clear that Black lives don't matter. Mm-hmm. And that everyone else does. And so we're shining a light on Black lives. It didn't dim your light any. Yeah. If anything, yours is still brighter. We're just shining one beam on Black lives, and we're asking for you to see it from over there. We hit it all. I like to always hit us with a wrap-up question because that's just what we do. So there's, to some degree, in my opinion, this vast space between Black and Asian Pacific Islander Americans, despite both groups being people of color, both groups being underrepresented minorities in America. I think if you think of Black and brown folks, the experience is often much closer, right? Thus, there's this just sort of shared understanding of empathy, certainly with regard to police brutality, if that is the main focus. It's easier for the Latinx community to say, me too. We've been there, and I think if you see any of the numbers, you would agree with that. Whereas the overlap for Black Americans and Asian Americans, there's not as much. If anything, Black Americans are the bad guy, always, and Asians, with the exception of periods of time, right? So sort of the World War II era right now, due to the offensive and hateful rhetoric of our leadership, often seen as the stereotyped good minority. And that's perspective. You all can feel free to correct me if you feel differently. I think there's also this keen separation between sort of insider, outsider. Black Americans, while they're outcasts in America, there's rarely an assumption that we're not American. Slavery, to some degree, dates us back. We know that there are Black people in America, while the Asian community regularly has to combat the assumption of immigrant. I'm sure there are countless other ways in which there are just these spaces of separation between us. In your opinion, does this vast space between us experience-wise lend itself to us not being as supportive of or acting as allies for one another? And do you see these vast differences and I guess like our own perception leading to tensions or like resentment between Black and Asian communities? You know, that was a twofold question. Happy to repeat as well. Ella, I'll go with you first since we started with Angela in my last question.
Just culturally, dating way back, both my parents were immigrants. My grandparents were immigrants. Both my parents are immigrants. I think there may be aggression dating back from the history in the Philippines. So, I mean, I don't know if I think they just carried that on culturally. There's a lot of colorism and colonialism involved in the Filipino culture, automatically. And they also relish the idea of the model minority myth that we talked about earlier. So I think that we like to take advantage of the fact that there's that model minority myth. Like, we don't get pulled over as much as Black and Latinx communities do, and but at the same time, I think Asian and Pacific Islanders have to remember that America did not welcome us with open arms at the same time when we came in. They had the Chinese Exclusion Act, they had the Japanese internment camps, and even Filipinos in San Francisco, they had to protest to get the same equal rights. And I'm so grateful, and I had learned that the Black Panthers were our allies. So remembering and knowing that much history, I think there probably is like some kind of vast separation, but it's deeply rooted on our culture.
Yeah.
I don't know if that kind of makes sense. Like, in the Philippines, if you're darker, you're known as like a labor worker, and the lighter you are, the wealthier you are. And so we have Filipinos who actually bleach your skin to kind of assimilate and make it known that, they have similarities with white people, which is totally, I'm sorry, it's not disgusting, but I just feel like it's embarrassing.
Angela, what do you have?
Yeah, so I think that's the danger, right? That's one of the reasons why the model minority myth is so dangerous. Colorism is so dangerous. These are all ideas that come from white people, and they cause us to turn against each other, against ourselves. And so when we buy into that, I think that's how these distances happen. And, I don't know if there's tensions or resentments by Black people against Asians. Certainly there's been times, the LA riot, Rodney King, it was Asian merchants shooting at Black people. The races have been pitted against each other quite successfully at times. But I do feel that there's a distance, which for me is the uncertainty, I think. And honestly, that's just that's why I agreed to participate in this conversation, even though like I was super nervous and unsure about being recorded, but I just wanted to have the conversation because it's not happening, and I'm not sure why on all sides, but the enemy is not each other. The enemy is the system, and it's, we are never going to overcome that as long as we allow it to divide us.
Well, that's it. Thanks. That was great, Angela. That's all we
No.
needed. Tackled everything that needed to be said. I don't have any follow-up questions. I do think that there is to some degree, it's like, I want to call it a war, but the struggle between various groups of people of color. And when there's a highlight on one, there's a question of why not us, and sort of pitted against one another. And I agree that is not our doing. And when we do it, damn, we're just giving the system exactly what it wants. We cannot further anything when we're fighting one another. And that's probably to some degree, I don't want to say that. I was going to say it's probably why we haven't gotten as far as we want to. That's not our fault. That's the system's fault as well. But we could get much further if we banded together. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation, and why I'm so grateful that both of you joined to have it, because I've learned so much and gotten so much off of my chest, and I feel heard and seen. So just thank you both for joining. As always, I want to shout out BIPOC businesses, BIPOC owned businesses, and then also resources. So resources that other allies can use, regardless, white, Asian, Latinx, to learn more about the movement, about the history, about how they can be a catalyst in what happens next. So I would love for y'all to shout out what you have for us. I will link everything that they are about to share in the description below. So let's keep with the alphabetical. Angela, what resources, businesses do you have for us?
Sure. I'll start with the businesses. So here in Columbia, there's a couple of places that I would just recommend. We did Elevate Gymnastics. It's a great place even just to have birthday parties. And they sometimes do day camps too when school's out of session. I know COVID's kind of messed with that a little bit. And the other local merchant, I guess, would be Glorious Gifts. And she's on Facebook and Instagram. She actually made my shirt. It's great. You should check out her stuff. And then in terms of resources, I would recommend embracerace.org, which is it's a Facebook community, but also a website, and they provide all sorts of educational resources for raising race-conscious children. So when we talk about like what's age appropriate or what, it's a great place to go and try to find that out. It's been really helpful for me, and I recommend it.
Love that. Love that. Thank you. Again, links will be below. Ella, what do you have for us? Resources, businesses, shout them out.
All right, so my first business that I'd like to talk about is Magpie Alchemy. She's a Filipino woman and lives in Sacramento. She creates holistic products that smell so amazing. And she also has this perfume called Pinayism. So Pinay is a Filipino woman. So, I'd highly recommend you check that out. And then another business is, if you're ever in Sacramento, Urban Roots Brewery is amazing. They have the bombest food and beer. And Rob Archie is a Black owner who actually created this organization called We Stand By You, which is like a walkout in the service industry. So he, alongside other businesses in Sacramento, actually closed down their businesses and had 3-hour discussions about the racial climate after George Floyd's death. and continuing to educate the community and show support. And some resources, actually one resource is a podcast called Fanti. So Travell Anderson and Jarrett Hill are two Black journalists who cover a bunch of things from political topics to pop culture. They shed a lot of light on cultural events with so much energy and knowledge, and it's fun to listen to.
I'm definitely going to check that out. I wish that, I'm going to have to check it out, but if Urban Roots Brewery ships beer.
Oh,
right?
they do?
Do they?
Yes.
So I was like, I want to support. I don't want to have to go to Sacramento to do it, but I'm going to check it out. I'm going to check it out tonight, Angela. I'll let you know. If they ship to Missouri, I'm on it. I'm getting it. So awesome. Thank you both so much. I cannot say that enough. This has been a really epic conversation. And I think that so many people are going to resonate with this. I think that this is different. I think lots of people have been having conversations with their white allies, but I don't think that we talk about the allyship that needs to happen between BIPOC folks enough. And so this was just really heartwarming. So again, thank you, thank you, thank you. Also to everyone watching, if you've enjoyed this episode, if you've enjoyed any episode previous, please do like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you get alerted every time that I upload a new episode. Our next episode is actually going to be with white mothers who are raising Black or biracial children, which I think will be really exciting. There'll be some really good conversation there as well. So again, thank you, peace, love, and we'll catch you next time. See ya.